Welcome to my weekly roundup of the sweetest off-meta things in Pokemon Pocket that top cut the biggest community tournaments this week. Everything we're going to cover today had a 70+% win rate in the tournament in which it was played. So if you're looking for something sweet and potentially powerful to play in Pokemon Pocket, you've come to the right place. Let's go ahead and get to it, shall we? We kick things off with Exeggutor Wigglytuff, piloted by yours truly to an 8-2 record in an over 600 player Pokemon Pocket tournament this weekend. I'm just going to link in the video description down below to my full deck tech and tournament run from that. It's awesome. Be sure to check it out if you want a full breakdown on this fantastic deck that I think is very competitive right now. Next up, we have a Machamp deck that finished with an 8-2 record in an over 1,500 player Pokemon Pocket tournament this weekend. In addition to the full EX Machamp line, it's also playing 2 copies of Meowth, as well as a singleton copy of Persian as alternative Pokemon. I haven't been a fan of Meowth in general, personally preferring Farfetch'd or Kangaskhan, but I will admit I have not spent a lot of time playing Meowth with the inclusion of Persian, which makes the card a lot more interesting in my opinion. Being able to pivot off of drawing cards into something that can deal a real amount of damage for 1 additional energy seems quite appealing. This player actually put up a result in the previous week as well, going 6-2 in a different smaller tournament, so this is not simply a one-off putting up solid numbers. We've got a wide spread of utility trainers here in one Giovanni, Potion, Pokedex even, and a red card alongside X Speed. I'd be curious to see if that's optimal after more people get their hands on this deck list, but it's definitely an interesting use of Meowth to say the least. Next up, we have a variation of the Greninja Mewtwo EX deck that finished 8-2 in the tournament in which it played. It is most notably playing 2 copies of Wigglytuff EX and a singleton promo Jigglypuff as an additional attacking line. This build seems like it would potentially be extra good into things going bigger like Charizard and Mewtwo, but I would wager it probably struggles into decks that are being hyper aggressive like Pikachu and Starmie decks, since it's giving up its front line of Kangaskhan that we've seen in decks like this in the past in order to play more big finishers that go toe to toe with your opponent's heavy hitters. Speaking of aggressive decks, up next we have a Golduck Starmie variation that went 8-3 in an almost 700 player Pokemon Pocket tournament this past weekend. I really like this mashup of Pokemon from a theory perspective. It's basically acknowledging, hey, while we want to be attacking with Starmie EX as soon as possible, we're not always going to be able to do that, and Golduck is essentially a non-EX version of Starmie, getting to hit for a hefty amount of damage for just 2 points of energy. That 70 damage for 2 that Golduck is dealing, notably when combined with Giovanni, hits that crucial 2-turn breakpoint of dealing 70 and then 80 to clear out an opposing copy of Mewtwo EX nice and clean. An extra interesting inclusion in this deck in terms of the 5th basic is we have 1 singleton copy of Paikumaku, I think I'm pronouncing that right, as opposed to the traditional Farfetch'd or Kangaskhan we've seen in these water decks in the past. I'd be curious to know if this feels optimal. There's not a ton of things in the metagame where water as a typing is particularly beneficial, so I would really question if perhaps Farfetch'd is a better choice here. It is noteworthy that this deck is playing 2 copies of Misty though, so a potential upside of playing a water Pokemon as your 5th basic is when you're going first with Misty, if you hit heads, you can attack for 30 right away, which does cleanly let you clear opposing 60 HP basic Pokemon on that second turn of the game. I really like the use of Misty in a deck like this in general. You're not trying to super high roll something like Blastoise or Articuno, but instead you're kind of using it to break serve in the games where you're going first and would normally be at an energy disadvantage. Hitting a single head lets you attack with 2 energy things on time. Up next, we have Alakazam Greninja, a deck list that is near and dear to my heart, one of my first brews that I absolutely love the play patterns of. This deck list went 7-3 in Ursa Day's over 1,500 player tournament this week. The basic game plan is relatively straightforward here. You want to lead on a Kangaskhan, putting up small chip shots worth of damage while you build up your stage 2s in the back. While playing multiple stage 2s in the single deck might seem counterintuitive, something to think about is that while a single stage 2 is relatively inconsistent to assemble, playing 2 different stage 2 lines increases the likelihood that one of the 2 comes together on time, letting you have this powerful payoff. Greninja is a nice aggressive attacker that lets you spread damage out even when it's on the bench, and Alakazam lines up very favorably into a variety of things in the format that want to attach a lot of energy, such as Charizard and Mewtwo. Most notably, both these big attackers only need a single specific energy of their color, meaning they play very well in a 2-color shell like this one. If you want to see some of this deck in action, be sure to check out the video description down below, where I'll have a link to my past gameplay highlight showing it off. Up next, we have an innovation to the Articuno Mostly Trainer deck. This went 6-2 in the tournament in which it was played. The variation here notably including 1 Ammonite and 1 Omastar as an additional attacker that you can build up. These large trainer quantity variations have often played fossils in the past as a way to kind of play around Sabrinas that you can discard from play, and because normally you're playing stinky trainers like Pokedex or even Handscope in this deck, playing a couple of Pokemon that those fossils can evolve into is a relative free roll. I will say one thing I would change about this deck is I expect it's optimal to play 2 copies of Helix Fossil instead of a split with the Dome if you want the flexibility to evolve one of them periodically into this Omastar line. Finally, we have a Gengar deck to feature in one of these off-meta roundups for the first time ever, going 5-2 in the tournament that it was played in. Gengar plus Wigglytuff finally getting on the scoreboard. Both of these cards individually are relatively powerful EX Pokemon when you can get things together. I will note that this particular deck list looks like it's probably very susceptible to the aggressive decks like Blaine and Starmie and Pikachu in the format, but things that give you a little bit more time to get things set up and get going might be very reasonable for you, getting 1 EX followed up by the next being 2 solid things that your opponent has to chip through. I would love to hear in the comments down below if you get a chance to give this one a try. Is this finally the Gengar deck many of his fans have long been waiting for in Pocket? Thanks for making it to the end of the deck roundup. You probably enjoyed what you watched, so be sure you smash that like button if you haven't already. If you're new here, consider subscribing to the channel and coming back again. If you're not familiar with me, my name is Jeff Hoagland. I've been playing card games competitively for a long time, and I've always had a focus on trying to build my own decks and playing them well inside of tournaments like the Wiggly Eggs deck that I highlighted at the start of this video. I absolutely love data and shifting through tournament results as well, having a graduate degree in mathematics, having spent time as a data scientist at a Fortune 50 company in a previous life. These days, you'll find me making TCG content full-time here on the internet. This YouTube channel is Pokemon Pocket all of the time, but you can also find me streaming 5+ days a week on twitch.tv, playing Pokemon Pocket, Marvel Snap, and whatever other fantastic strategy and card games have caught my attention lately. I'd love it if you stop by again sometime in the future, and as always, may your next pack be a fantastic one.